feel like tips that you would have for writers that feel like, you know, you're not even sure how to start. Like, you have all these ideas, you want to expand, but you're like, whoa, how do I expand on these ideas and like make it into a full story, as opposed to 4 sentences that I have written in a notebook that one day I'm going to make into a script.
Awesome. I can do that tonight. Okay. How do you get started? Great. Okay.
And I think I'm more, and this is Katisha, I think I am, well, first, thank you so much, and I'm so grateful that Mike shared the information with me. I'm also at the very beginning stage of a potential project, and I really want to understand the full process. And so I'm really here for just understanding how people who do this and do this well, how they approach the work, and using that to maybe engage a writer on a particular project.
Okay. And Katisha, what's your email? I should.
Sure. It's Katisha. It's spelled Ketisha, and it's Kennebrew, spelled KINNEBREW @gmail.com.
Katisha Kennedra @gmail.com.
It's Kenny Brew.
Oh, I think you're signed up already.
Oh, maybe.
Let's talk about it offline. Let's talk about it offline. I want to get started. So, okay. I want to talk about how to get started. And my experience as a writer is that I could talk all day long and give you a whole bunch of ideas, and tell you what had happened at the movies and what had happened when we went to the ice cream store. But then when I came to the journal and I started writing, nothing came. I would start sweating. My hands would start shaking and nothing. This person that talks all the time, all of a sudden had nothing to say as a writer. And I was like, what's going on here? So I picked up The Artist's Way, and I was like, I have this great story I want to tell about the slave narratives, and I know all this stuff. I've read Manning Marable, and I know everything about the detail of a slave's life. I know the morning when they got up, what they ate, you know, what holidays they celebrated, and then I would go to the paper and nothing would happen. And I realized, especially actors, is that we are storytellers. But there's this big divide that's missing. Hi, Diane. That happens because we feel that the way we talk isn't writing. The way you talk is your writer's voice. Let me say that again. The way that you speak is your writer's voice. And by not acknowledging that, you get in your own way. And what's important, and in my TED Talk, which I'm going to send you all that stuff when you guys log on, I talk about that process of learning that the way that I speak is my story. And that, I don't know, I mean, some Black folks call it the oral tradition, whatever. It ain't just the oral tradition. It's learning to take the way that I speak and then putting it into a format that is a story that people can enter into and understand. And that's what structure is about. But the first place I always start is, tell me your story. And I'm going to give you an exercise for you to start telling me your story, why you're here. So I hope you guys have pen and paper out in front of you right now. And I'm going to do this exercise called the morning pages that Julia Cameron does in The Artist's Way, where she says, sit down with a piece of paper, and I want you to start writing in longhand without an agenda, the first thing that comes up. But the goal of this exercise is for you to stay on the page for 3 pages without stopping. So what that means is if something comes up or nothing comes up and you're like, I don't know what to say, 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 I don't know. Then you write, I don't know what the hell to say, I don't know what the hell to say, until something else comes up. But you never take the pen away from the paper until you've gotten to 3 pages. This is about giving yourself permission to wander around on the page. You don't have to be good. Nobody's ever going to see it. It could be your grocery list. It could be how pissed you were about this morning's breakfast, the train being stopped. The first thing that comes to your mind, if you didn't have the ability to talk, what would you be saying right now? Write it down. Now, we may not get to all 3 pages, but I want you to start writing right now without stopping until I tell you to stop. And intermittently, you can start writing now. I may give you a list to make and then go back to freeform writing. So I'm going to start it. I'm going to time it, and I want you to start now. Just start writing the first thing that comes to mind, and don't stop writing until I say stop writing. Right now, you're making a list of 10 things that you love. Don't think about it. The first thing that comes to mind. And now I want you to make a list of 10 things that you're proud of. First 10 things that come to mind. Don't think about it. And now I want you to make a list of 10 things that you're afraid of. Ten things that give you unadulterated joy, your guilty pleasures. Mine are Ben and Jerry's Half-Baked, men with beards and tool belts with muscles. Don't judge me. Baby brown Jesuses, men in African robes looking like Jesus walking across the desert. These are my guilty pleasures. Write down 10 things that give you unadulterated joy. Meaning the juicier and spicier these things are, the better, because that's a source of great storytelling. The juicy parts of ourselves, the scandalous parts of ourselves. They're the most wonderful parts of ourselves. They don't have editors, and they're wonderful. So you should have written about 40 different topics, sentences by now. You should have a full page written of these things that nobody's ever gonna see. And now I would like you to go through and circle the things that are related, the recurring themes. So let's say if you said, I'm proud of my job, I'm proud of my family, I'm afraid I won't work again, I'm afraid that someone in my family is going to leave, then loss of work, loss of a family member, the love of your family, those are recurring themes. Just sort of circle the things that keep coming up in your list that are related. Anybody? What themes kept coming up for you? You don't have to go into detail. Okay, I'm gonna assume
Family comes up a lot
family.
for
Okay.
me. Yeah, family comes up a lot for me.
Okay. What else? No more? Okay. All right. Then I'm going to stop right there with the list. So you have this idea of family. That's the recurring thing, or loss of love. Whatever that recurring theme is that you have, that's a story that wants to be told. So pick something from your list, and I want you to write down a few sentences of the first time that ever happened. So if you put on your list, falling in love is one of my unadulterated pleasures. Describe a time that you fell in love. Take a few minutes and just write that down. And write it down as if you're saying it to someone you really want to share that memory with. I wanted to kill myself. That post made me so upset that I responded to it. Then I went and I read the article. Then I shared the article on Facebook, and then I wrote a commentary about it. That hit close to home because that's one of the chords for me. Women who are being abused. Women in my list, fighting for women who have been abused. Fighting for women and children in domestic abuse. The role I just played on TV was I ran a nonprofit for women who have been abused. If I go to my list every morning of things that are important to me, you will find in your list of 10 things that you love, 10 things that you are proud of, 10 things that you're afraid of. If you go through your social media, you will find that you are responding to those same things over and over and over again. If family came up in your list over and over and over again, then that means that issues around family are important to you. And it's time for you to spend some time doing those morning pages every day, writing about how you feel about that. Writing every time something triggers you in your day. and you want to cuss and you want to, instead of speaking, instead of going to social media, go to your morning pages and write it down as if you were writing a social media post. The thing that stops us from starting writing is that we have an idea in our head that writing has to happen in front of the computer while you're at a desk or at a writer's retreat or drinking coffee in the Starbucks. Writing happens when you write. That's it. It doesn't have to be good. It doesn't have to be bad. And actually, the best writing is usually the shittiest. You talking about Beyonce's dress in the Lemonade video and all that water and the yellow and how fabulous it is. That's writing. That's writing. If you get on the phone and you talk to your friend on the phone for an hour and you record that conversation and you transcribe it, you have told at least 4 or 5 stories. That's writing. That's how you begin writing. That's how you steal time writing. Every time you want to talk some shit or gossip or give your opinion, write it down. If it helps you to post it on Facebook, great, do it. I've written entire blog posts and articles and essays just copying and pasting my Facebook post. Because the only things that I post about are things that come up on my list, things that make me afraid, things that make me mad, things that make me cry, things that make me sad. And I come back to the morning pages and I write them down. If you did that every day, you could go to your Facebook post right now on your wall and cut and paste all of your comments and put them in your journal. You would begin to see a thread of things that are important to you. Things that keep coming up. Children getting beat down by the police. Mothers hitting their children in videos. Me, cats and music. Okay, yes, I'm a cat lady. But everybody now sends me cat videos of cats with music. Why? Because I'm always posting posts about my cats and how they love classical music and then shooting videos of them with classical music. That's a whole story. That could be a short film. The crazy cat lady and her cats. But that is something that no matter where I am in the middle of the day, if somebody sends me a beautiful video about that, I could just talk for 10 minutes about that. That's a story waiting to happen. That's something that makes me vulnerable. That's something that moves me. Little puppies, little babies, right? Or innocence, like puppies, babies, children, not being protected or being abused. That's a big thing for me. Anytime I see a thread like that, I'm going to have something to say. That's a story that's burning inside that wants to be told. The things that make you mad, the things that make you sad. Instead of thinking, I need to sit down and write a screenplay, why don't you just sit down and write how you feel about things? That's how you start writing. Write about things that make you feel something. Something strongly, something negatively, something positively. Write them down. When nothing else comes, go to your list. 10 things I love. What do I love? Oh, I put on here, I love when my mother makes apple pie. Okay, then you're going to go to your morning pages and you saw that in your list. You're going to write for 3 pages longhand about your mother's apple pie. If you stay on that page long enough, a story will appear. The one thing that stops us from writing is that we have this idea in our head that is supposed to look a certain way. Writing is when you put pen to paper and write. Writing is when you put your fingers on the keyboard of your phone, your laptop, your iPad, and start typing. That's writing. If you get in the habit of putting it all in one place, you are now writing a journal. You are now writing a novel. You are now writing. It doesn't matter what the form is going to be. What's most important is to do it a little bit every day and do it in one place. Just one place. That's it. If you let yourself just come and wander around on the page and you don't miss a day doing it, you do it every single day, then eventually you will have 50 pages. And you can go back and edit later, right? I've read Stephen King's book on writing. He has a great book on writing. He has a room with no windows in his house, just a desk and a computer, nothing else to distract him. His family brings his meals and puts them on a tray outside the door. He goes and he sits in that room for 6 hours every day until something comes. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But what's important is that he creates a space for it to happen. Okay, so that's step one. But make a space for yourself to write. For me, it's a very particular chair. It's a particular way I have to have my Cuban coffee. It's the same mug. It's the same journal. It's the same spot with the same lamp. I just have a chair that is where I write. So that when I go there, my body goes, guess what? You get to just complain and bitch and moan about whatever. Just put your pen to the paper. And there's gonna be some good coffee here. And probably your favorite like Moroccan music. I create a sacred space to write. When I'm at home visiting my family, it is my great-grandmother's window from her bedroom. I love sitting near that window. Don't ask me why. I have since I was a little kid. If I go to that window and sit down and I have some tea or I have a milkshake, I can just write my journal forever. Because I've identified that as a place that's a writing place for me. It's safe, it's quiet, I love it. I'm seeing what my great-grandmother saw before she passed. It's just a quiet space for me that I identify with writing. I have since I was a little kid, right? In my room, I went and bought a writing chair from a vintage store. If you make writing a special treat for yourself and don't judge it, don't judge what comes up, you just come to it every day, something will come up because there's a story in you that wants to be told. You wouldn't be here today. You wouldn't be listening to this crazy woman talk to you if there wasn't. I wrote my entire first play by coming to those morning pages and writing whatever came down, whatever came out of my mind and my mouth, whatever. I wrote it down in that book, 3 pages every morning for an entire year. At the end of that year, I had 3 plays that I had written. Just because I allowed myself to wander around on the page and write about things that were important to me, things that made me laugh, things that made me mad. And at the end of that year, I went through that journal and I circled things and I made lists. What came up? My daddy and the house he grew up in. What came up? My crackhead auntie and how I had to go get out the crack house. What came up? There's certain things that are gonna come up all the time. How angry it makes me whenever I get criticized by my nana, every time and then I just started writing stories about those moments. I didn't think, okay, I need to put this in a script. This needs to be a solo show. This needs to be a movie. I just wrote down the story. I just wrote, this is what happened. She walked in here. She said this to me. My feelings were hurt. Then I came back out and she asked me to do the dishes because my feelings were hurt. The dishes got dumped on me. The end story. Like, I didn't put an agenda on it. I waited until I had lots and lots of pages, and then I organized them into a story later. I was like, oh, well, this wants to be a screenplay. Okay, this wants to be a solo play. Okay, this just wants to be a TV show. Okay, this wants to be a book. I did that after I had generated 400 or 500 pages of text. Some of it I did in the morning pages. Others of it, if something made me really mad, I picked up my phone and I just started talking about it. And then later I transcribed that, and that became a monologue. The thing that stops you from writing is that you think it's supposed to look a certain way. You know who makes the most money from writing? People who write for the National Enquirer. Why? Because it's bullshit. It's meant to titillate. It's meant to be scandalous. It's not meant to be the truth. It's meant to be the kind of thing that will make you read it because you're talking bad about somebody. It's people behaving poorly. Why do we constantly talk about the President of the United States? Because he behaves poorly. And it makes us mad. And we spend hours and hours and hours writing about him when we could be writing about something else. Or the hours and hours that you write about him making you mad could be a short film. Right? Writing is what you care about. That's it. Putting it down on paper. That's my first one. How do you start? Every morning, 3 pages longhand. If you can't think of what to write, write, I don't know what to 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 write. Make the list. You can, ideally, those lists that I gave you should be 100 things, not 10 things. Because we're in this class setting, I give you 10 things. Usually, if I'm in a class that's long-term with folks or a writer's retreat, the homework that I would give them before the writer's retreat would be to write 100 things you love. They could be one sentence, it could be one word. 100 things you love, 100 things you're proud of, 100 things you're afraid of. If you wrote down 100 things, of all of those things, that'd be 10, 15 pages of writing you would have written. Those things that you write down are the first lines of stories. But you got to give yourself permission to write a lot of bad shit before you write good shit, or to just sort of throw up on the page. But you have to do it every day. Because here's what happens if you don't do it every day. And Stephen King talks about this in his book on writing. If you come to the page on Monday and you go off about this terrible thing that happened at work, right? And you create the character of your boss, and you say the asinine things that they did and how that pissed you off, and then what you went and did, and then the other employee gave you some backup, and and you're getting into a real epic story, right? If you then skip writing on Tuesday, even if it's 5 minutes, when you come back on Wednesday, you have got to go back and remember everything that you were doing on Monday. So the little half hour that you gave yourself to write, you're not going to be writing. You're going to be trying to remember where you left off. Writing isn't about finding one day to write a long time. It's about finding time every day to steal time so that you stay in the story that you're telling, so that you work out the muscle of writing. That's why you have to do the morning pages every day. They call them the morning pages. You ain't got to do it in the morning. It could be anytime. You can say, okay, I'm on the train for 20 minutes every day going to my job. Then 20 minutes every day, you're going to have that journal in front of you on the subway and you're going to write. That's it. It's about coming to the page every day. And then when you have 100 pages written, then you go back and you circle themes, stories that came up. And then you freeform off of those. But the first thing is to create raw material. You can use the morning pages straight. You can use your list, but come to the page every day. That's how you start. What you don't do is say, I'm gonna write this. No, that's how you get in your own way, because then you have an agenda of how you want it to look. And that's not where good writing comes from. Good writing comes from the heart. Questions? Comments? Thoughts? Stuff you're struggling with? Is everything clear? Can I elucidate something else? All right, I'm gonna keep going then. So that's how you get started, right? So we have this thing that comes up about writer's block. And I got another trick for you when writer's block comes up. You're doing the morning pages every day, even if it's only 10 minutes or 5 minutes, okay? Then nothing comes up. Is nothing coming up, or is what's coming up what you don't want to hear? That's two different things. Because if you commit to going to the morning pages, 3 pages, longhand, every day, and even when nothing comes up and you say, I don't know what to write, I don't know what to write, you're writing. Just work out the muscle until something comes up, and something will. So I don't believe in writer's block if you're sitting there doing the morning pages every day. It's not writer's block. It's that you don't like what you're writing. And that's irrelevant right now. You have to write 500 good pages to get 100. You have to write 500 pages to get 100 great pages for a book, right? I wrote 500 pages my first year in the morning pages. That ended up being 3 different plays within those 500 pages. But I needed to write those 500 pages. I needed to wander around and figure out what was important to me and tell stories, some that I would use, some that I wouldn't, so that I could get the pages. It's the commitment to coming every day. Just like you go to the gym, at least every other day. Because if you miss a week, you got to start all over again. It's the same thing with writing. And if you only wrote 5 minutes a day, you wrote 5 minutes. In this class, you have written at least 20 minutes, just making lists. What if you did that every day? What if you wrote 4 pages every day? At the end of the week, you'd have, so 28 pages written. That's more than you had today. And don't edit them. editing is also how we get in our way. It's supposed to look like this, and he's supposed to say that. No, don't worry about that. Write words on the page that have meaning for you. And give yourself a time frame. I'm going to write today. I know I only have 8 minutes. I'm going to start the timer. I'm going to pick up the pen, and I'm going to write for 8 minutes until the timer goes off. If today you got 40 minutes, then you stay on the page for 40 minutes. If today you only have 3 minutes, you stay on the page for 3 minutes. But you give yourself a time. You make that time sacred. You don't judge that time. It doesn't need to be 20 minutes. It doesn't need to be an hour. I don't need to spend 4 hours. The thing that we do, the heart of procrastination is, well, I only got 5 spare minutes today, so I'm just going to wait and write for an hour on Sunday. That's never going to happen. Write the 5 minutes you have now. Then steal another 5 minutes later. And then Sunday, write for an hour. But write every day. And when the block comes along, go to your list. Go to your list. If you feel blocked again, go to your Facebook post. Go to your Twitter. The first thing that's trending that makes you mad, write it down. I bet you could write for a good 10 minutes about that. That I always turn on Twitter and I'm just like appalled. I'll just go, what's trending? I'm like, I'm appalled. I'm appalled. It will trigger something in you. So the next time you feel like talking, when I do a writer's retreat, people come to the retreat and they're like, la, 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 when I talk, I was like, this is a silent retreat. They're like, what? I was like, for the first 8 hours, there'll be no talking. But they're like, well, what if I have to do? I was like, write it down. What if I have to go to the bathroom? Write it down and hand me a note. What if I feel like I'm really uncomfortable, I need to go outside? Write it down and put the note on the table and go outside. People are forced to make a commitment to every time they want to speak, they write. That's it. Write. Every day. Okay? So that's my first take. Hi, little Brittany. I see little Brittany. That's my first take on writer's block and getting started. Is that clear to folks? Do you have questions? I see the little nod at the heads. Okay, the little nod at the heads. It's a good sign. I like head nodding. It's cute. Okay. All right. So let me go to the class page and let's keep grinding right along. Oh dear. So besides getting started, were there other questions before I move on to my list? Okay. In my list, I then go on, and when you guys get a chance and you come to the class page, I want you to watch the TED Talk, because I go through this process of making the list in that talk. Okay. The inciting incident is another way to deal with block. Okay. To incite means to start something, to begin something. If you say there was a riot, he incited a riot. Incite is a verb. Okay? If you are beginning to tell a story and there's no inciting incident, what had happened in the colloquial term, basically, what had happened was, if nothing is happening, that's part of the reason why you can't start a story. The inciting incident is the thing that makes your story happen. And a great example of that is Law and Order. Every single Law and Order is exactly the same. It's exactly the same. Every episode of Law and Order, they're going to start with the murder. Like, that's the inciting incident. You know right away, that's why we're here, because there was a murder. If there's no inciting incident, so say you've decided, I went to my list and today I wrote about the first Christmas with my family where they told me Santa Claus wasn't real. Devastation. What's the first thing that happened that day that starts your story? Do you open a present? And do you thank Santa? Do you get up in the middle of the night and look for Santa and you don't see him? And you're very upset? That's the event. That's where you would start writing the story. I woke up. I was looking for Santa. I stayed up all night in my pajamas. He did not show up. I was very upset the next day because I thought I wasn't getting any presents. That's the inciting incident. Your story can begin with that, like they do in Law and Order. You know, you have the UPS guy strolling in, you know, he got his headphones on. He's not paying attention to anything. He goes to knock on the door to make a delivery. The door is open and he's like, yo, what's up? And he's like, hello, I got a delivery for you. And then he walks in and there's a dead body on the floor. That's the inciting incident. Every Law and Order starts with the discovery of the crime or the enactment of the crime. That's the inciting incident. If your story is about my first Christmas, why are we here hearing a story about your first Christmas? What happened? Well, my first Christmas, I got the bike that I'd always wanted. My dad put it together. It was a Schwinn. I got on it. I rode down the street and I got hit by a car. That's the inciting incident. If there's no action, if there's no event that has happened, you don't have an inciting incident. The inciting incident is what causes the story to happen. Right? If you go to your Facebook post and you're writing about something on the Facebook post, it's the Facebook post that's the inciting incident. What happened in the Facebook post? Oh, this woman got beat down in the Waffle House. I'm just bringing up the Waffle House example because the Waffle House came up time and time and time and time again today in trending. First, there was somebody in Tennessee who walked into a Waffle House and killed people. That makes my brain just boil. I really want to lose it, right? At the same time, in the Waffle House in Alabama, the cops beat down some woman who was just standing there complaining about the service that she was receiving. She asked to speak to the manager, and instead of the person going and getting the manager, they went and called the police because she asked to speak to the manager because they were fucking up their job. That made me really pissed off. So I wrote a post about, don't be going in the Waffle House. You either get shot or beat down by the cops for no good fucking reason. That would be my story today. The inciting incident, this woman got beat down for asking to speak to the manager because somebody wasn't doing their job. That's the inciting incident. That's what causes me to tell you the story about how mad I am. That's another trick for when you get blocked, for when I don't know where to start. Tell me what happened. That's all writing is, right? If you're stuck, go, what happened was, I love the colloquial. Because when you're just basic and ghetto like that, that's actually where great storytelling starts. What happened was, I came out the house, you know, the person that they always put on the news that you're like, where did they get this person in her rollers and her robe standing outside? But she always has the most exciting version of the story. I came outside and then I smelled smoke. And I was like, oh no. What happened was, and she tells you the story with all the drama involved. She's telling you, she is the inciting incident. Because the first thing out of her mouth is, what happened? That's the inciting incident. When you feel blocked, when you feel like you can't write, you can't come up with any ideas, tell me, what happened today that pissed you off? Write it down. Write it down. That's how you get started. You write it down. Now, I got a lot of things on this list, but I want to come back to you guys and address what you want to hear. So, more questions for me. Anybody? What are you struggling with now as a writer? What's getting in the way of you telling story right now? Why aren't you writing? Everybody could write. Because all of my clients had never written. They were actors turned writers. They were people who had good ideas and had a day job, you know, like Juan, who I taught at the Maggie Flanagan Studio, and I was teaching the business of acting, and I taught Shakespeare, and I eventually started teaching documentary theater, how to write your own solo show, using the methods that I'm talking about today. And Juan came up to me and he said, I really want to write, but I don't know how. I was like, you don't know how to pick up a pen and write down in a book? And he looked at me and he was like, I hate you so much. No, he didn't say I hate you. He just looked at me like, oh, you're going to be a pain in the ass. And I was like, let's take my writing class. He was like, but I've never written anything. I was like, take my writing class. And so he took the writing class. And at that time I was doing weekly writer groups at my apartment in Manhattan. And so it'd be like 5 writers, we get together every week. And they were like, I'm stuck. And I would give them an exercise like the one I gave you today. Write down these lists. And then I would pull something from the list and ask them questions about it and have them record themselves speaking. And then they would transcribe those recordings. And then the next week we would come back, look at the transcriptions and organize them into a story. Just clean it up. Most of the time those transcriptions had scenes or monologues. They were great. It was great writing because it was driven from, so you wrote on your list the story of your grandmother. Tell me that story the first time she told you about your dad. And the person started talking and we recorded it, and that was their writing. That is how Juan wrote his first show. He was struggling with putting the pen to the paper. And I said, Juan, just talk. And then we made this magical discovery one day. Because a lot of times all writers need is somebody to listen to them, right? And I was like, Juan, I've asked you this story about your grandmother telling you about your father for the first time. You were like 10 years old. A lot of times you always get stuck or you feel like it's not interesting, you don't stay with it. And I said, why? And as he was talking, he would tell the story and he would speak in English to me telling the story, but then his grandmother would respond in Spanish. And then he would like translate it. And I said, what happens if you just tell me the whole story in Spanish? What happens if you treat story like you're just listening to someone telling you a story and you're writing it down? I was like, and so I said to Juan, I said, sit down and ask your grandmother to tell you a story and write down what she says. Because good writers learn how to listen to other people. Write down what she's saying. And he was like, okay, but it's in Spanish. I was like, dime. There was nobody else in the class that spoke Spanish. That wasn't the point. The point was that I wanted to hear the truth of how he heard his grandmother tell the story. He could translate it later. The raw material of his memory, hearing her speak, was so much more beautiful than anything he was just trying to write down. What if you treated writing like you're just taking down the story that's being told to you? And the way that you do that is that you choose things from the list of things that are important to you. And then maybe you have to interview your family. When I first started writing, I would hear a story the first Christmas of when I got a bike and I got hit by a car. I recorded that story. I told it to my friend and I recorded it. And then I went and I asked my dad to tell me that story. And then I went and asked my aunt to tell me that story. They had completely different versions because everybody is seeing the world through their own lens, right? They had completely different versions of that story. So I interviewed them and I recorded those interviews. And then I wrote a scene based on the 3 different ways that these people saw the story. My 6-year-old self, my dad, my great aunt. And it was a great scene because they all had like their 3 cents to throw in. And I was like, the car hit me. And my dad was like, no, the man in the car got out and he meant to hit you. And I was like, my father was like, he was intentional. And my aunt was like, I'm going to kill him. I was like, well, it's an accident. But they didn't even see it as an accident. They were like, this is going to be cause for murder. They had completely opposing, really strong points of view. I was just like, I'm afraid of a bike and see, this is what happens. And they were like, no, there was malicious intent. It was high drama because each person was speaking from their perspective. This is my child. My child's about to be hit. Oh no, it must be something evil behind this, right? Good writers just learn how to be listeners. Listen to your characters. And usually you should be listening to people you know something about. If you're writing and you have a story in your head and nothing's coming up, it's probably because you're writing about something you don't really know nothing about. So if you want to write about it, you better start doing some research. And research can look like, I'm going to interview my father. I am going to research 1989 in Philadelphia, North Philly, where my mom went to school. I have a client who's writing about her mom and her aunt. I was like, why don't you go read some stuff about what teenagers were doing in Philly during that time, where they went to school, where they hang out, what they ate. Did they go to the Dairy Queen? Did they hang out in Denny's? Interview some people who were teenagers during that time. Learn how to listen to your characters. And that's a kind of writer research. You can pick up the phone and call your mom and be like, how did you fall in love with my dad? When did that happen? And just listen. When you learn how to listen to people that way, when you come to write, you treat writing like, let me just listen to what she said and just write it down. Interviewing people and learning how to listen is another way to get unstuck. You have a story in your head. Go ask somebody that would have been there. Go ask somebody that's experienced something like that and start interviewing them if you have a hard time channeling them. But usually, if you're writing about something that's close to your heart, if you simply channel something that has meaning to you, you'll hear the story because it's a thing that's burning up inside of you. And if you don't hear the story, then it's time to look at what's getting in the way. In Juan's case, it was the language thing and the fear of telling a story about his family. And I was like, mira papi, all you have to do is start talking right now. Story that you're going to transcribe and nobody's going to read but you. And later, if you want to change the names and change the given circumstances and make it some other family in, I don't know, in LA 20 years earlier, you can do that. You can't allow the fear of talking about your family to get in the way of your early writing. Because the best writing comes from what you know. Nobody knows your family like you do. Nobody knows like what happened to you except you. Right? So it was a fear of writing about his family and then also sort of speaking in English because like the people that he wanted to write about didn't speak to him in English, they spoke to him in Spanish. So he's trying to like listen to them talk and translate at the same time. That's too much work. I was like, just write it in Spanish, worry about what it's going to be later. Again, don't worry about what the story is going to be. Just allow, and just throw it up on the page or throw it up on the recorder and make lots of recordings. Recording is a really quick way to write. Why? Because when you speak, a 45-minute tape of you just talking and telling stories that come to mind, when you transcribe that, that can be 20 pages of writing. Easily. You can talk 20 pages of writing really fast, much faster than you can write it, which is a great way to generate raw material. So I'm going to take the pressure off you. Just start telling stories based on those things that came up in your list, talking to a recorder. Write it down in the morning pages. I promise you, if you did that every day for 20 minutes, every day, 30 days from now, you would have a rough draft of a first script that I would then say, okay, come on, let's put this in an outline and make a story. Before you learn form or structure or anything else, the first thing you have to learn is how to stay on the page and create story and tell me what had happened, the inciting incident. That's it. And usually writers get their best stuff by discussing it. Like television writers, for example, people are writing pilots. It's usually a room full of people, or people who write episodics, hour-long television shows. That's why it's a room full of people writing. There's always a writing crew, right? For every TV show. Shondaland has tons of writers who get in a room and talk, or they Skype or Zoom like we're doing, and they get in a room and they talk to each other. What they do is talk through what had happened. The first thing I figure out is what happened. They're like, well, she discovered her husband in bed with another man, and then she shot him, and they have to bring him to the ER at Grey's Anatomy. The first thing that team of writers does is decide what happened, the inciting incident, and everything falls out from there. TV writers also do this thing where they talk out loud as the characters, right? And that's what I was talking about with the recorder. If you imagine your grandmother telling you this story in her voice, then that takes care of all the problems of character and dialogue. Because you're sitting there and you're allowing her to tell you the story. You're just taking down the words, but you really got to hear her. And it helps to hear her when the person that's talking is somebody that has a great emotional value to you, or someone that you know, or you're talking about an event that impacted you deeply, right? A trick that I love to do is people are always want to write stories about their mama. Oh Lord, we all want to write stories about our mama. I was like, do you know your mama? I'm like, what was I know my mama? I was like, but do you know your mama? As a friend would know her, not as your child. And I was like, I would like you to introduce yourself to me as your mother. Sure enough. Where are you from? When I tell you people have never thought about doing that, I was like, how you can write about your mama and you're only seeing her from the outside in. You only know her. You're only experiencing her as your mother instead of as a person with a whole life that happened way before you came, right? In order to do that, sometimes you have to go in there and find out who they were. I know I did. I asked my grandmother and I asked the next door neighbors that I grew up with who also went to high school with my mom. I was like, tell me about my mom at the prom. They told me the whole skinny. She was like a diva. I didn't experience my mom this way. The rest of the world, though, did. So I had to learn how to listen to who she was by asking for stories. I asked her about prom. And then I asked the next door neighbor, who I later learned had a crush on my mama all during high school. I was like, Mom, you didn't know that? She's like, I had no idea. I was like, well, he told me. And I interviewed Mr. Farston, and I was like, what she had on? He remembered what she had on. He remembered who she came with and the car and the flowers. I mean, this man remembered. It was a gorgeous story. I learned how to listen to people and interview them. And here's the simple trick of interviewing people. Tell me what had happened. What's your name? Where you're from? And then allowing people to talk and really listening to them. If you can't repeat back to a person basically what it is that they said to you, you're not really listening. The art of listening is the writer's tool. These are all tons of things that you can do when you're stuck. Tons of things. When you go overwhelmed, when you can't function, all that. Then the stuff that I talk about at 6 and 7, structure and outline and all that jazz and how to get feedback, all that is secondary. The first thing you got to do is generate raw material using the steps that I have outlined. That's where Juan began. Juan, I also have a client named Ron, so I'm messing up their names. But Juan's solo show, Empanada for a Dream, he's now written 3 plays, a web series. He's working on a screenplay now. He got all these awards and nominations and grants. He's produced, and he just started exploring the story in my class. That's it. All of my clients have written that way. Now, I'm going to send everybody who participated in this class my screenplay outline and my play outline. But I don't want you to get stuck on that. I want you to work on generating material. That's all I want you to focus on. Are there questions before I wrap up? Thoughts? Comments?
To start again, and I have a couple of pieces that I did actually start, and I wanted to work on them. Some new work, yeah.
Awesome.
And I also have an unfinished play. Well, that's a long story that I don't know if it's workable on stage, but anyway, that's something.
And at this point, have you thought about a reading? Have you had readings?
I'm in Charleston, South Carolina, so it's kind of hard. There's really no venue to do that. The only one available is where you could have readings, and I actually did take something there and have it read, is about 20 miles away, and it's very expensive to get there. And when you just come in, they have their favorites, and the favorites read first, and you get to read last, and so that's a problem too.
So, well, now you have Zoom,
Mm-hmm.
and this, I mean, I have a paid account because I teach a lot of classes and coach people, but you could have a free account. I just did this with a client of mine, we did a private retreat. She's been working on her script for the last year, Justine, and we did a private retreat, and half of it we did, it was a whole weekend, half of it we did in person, the other half we did online. And I was like, okay, so now let's just read what you got. And she read her pages for the first 2 hours. I gave her notes. And I was like, okay, and now we're going to get your friend so-and-so to join the class. And we're going to get her on Zoom and have her read the rewrites you do and do it on Zoom. You can do it virtually. It doesn't even have to be an actor. It can be another writer. It can be your coach in the way that it was with Justine. It could be in a class. It depends on what stage you are in the writing. But there comes a certain point that when you got a draft and you don't know what to do next, you need to hear it. I mean, that's all that writers would do in famous retreats when they, go to Sundance or whatever. It's a bunch of
that's the thing is you need to have other people read it, and you need to hear it, as you say, how it sounds.
Solve a lot of problems. The second piece is to get dramaturgical work. So the way that I dramaturg is I'm always like, please read it out loud, especially with I've been working with a client on for a long time.
Right.
Read out loud so we can hear what's really landing and what's not. And then I take notes page by page because I'm reading the script as they're reading it. And I'm taking page by page and then giving them notes. But I really feel like writers, once you're at a certain point with the third or the fourth draft, you actually intuitively know what needs to happen next. Really hear it. And so sometimes you just need the experience of hearing it. If it's a solo show, I actually then have the writer read it themselves. That multi-character show, I'll ask other readers to read it, or I'll read part of it for them. And then we can record the Zoom session and they can go back and listen to it. It's for them. Nobody else is ever going to hear that. It's just for that writer. So there's a dramaturgical portion to let somebody else see the pages, and then there's also just get somebody to read out loud. They could do that on the phone. Like it doesn't have to be complicated. And I have lots of clients all over the place. I have clients in Canada. A woman from Finland who emailed me about this class. She's like, I can't come to that time. I was like, okay, we coach on Zoom. Since we know, so I come back, I talk to her, and we have the internet now. You don't have to wait for theaters. Local theaters I wouldn't mess with unless you want them to produce your show. But if you get your show produced other places, do this on Zoom. Do it on Skype until you get something else. Don't let that. Entire television shows, Homicide. Most of the television shows now, those writers are not all in LA. They do that via video like this. It saves the studio tons of money. They don't fly people in, make them move. They can get great New York writers who also write theater to write from their desk in New York. It's quick. You don't have to juggle people's schedules to physically get them someplace. Use these resources that are at hand. You don't need to be in the same room. I ran an entire production company, Simon Says, where all of the employees were in different states. I'm in Morocco half the year. I still run my business from here. So, and I feel like not always being in New York gives me a place to actually really concentrate and write. So that when I'm having contact with the outside world, because I've scheduled these Zoom sessions, right? But the silence that I need to write happens much better when I don't have to walk into an office. I can just schedule on Zoom. So call some people in New York and let them read. On the phone, on Zoom. Keep it easy. Keep it easy. All of my coaching now is basically virtual. It's on Zoom. It allows me. So Don't let that get in the way. I mean, you're a really good writer. You've taken enough of my workshops and retreats.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You don't need, you know how to kick out a draft in a weekend. Man.
Yeah.
So at this point, it's about hearing it out loud and then getting some dramaturgy.
Mm-hmm.
I saw your notes from the survey where you talked about getting an editor.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to be in New York to get an editor.
Uh-huh.
Do you want an editor to give you I mean, an editor is basically, well, sometimes editors give structural notes. If you feel like you're at your final draft, get an editor, but you feel like you need some structural help, you know, that's not, you can always set up an appointment with me and talk to me about, you know, doing script notes. But I think you're way past class at this point. You know how to knock out a draft.
Well, that's, yeah, I do.
If you wanna talk about readings and stuff, just schedule if you on the emails that you send me back and forth in the footer scheduling link, just schedule 30 minutes and let's talk about it.
Okay.
So
all right.
If you go down the footer, there's a link that says schedule and we can have
So do you want me to email you one of my plays or
I want you to schedule
or a scene?
I want you to schedule a 30-minute meeting with me.
Okay.
And then email it to me and let's talk about it.
Okay, so first schedule the meeting.
Yep.
We have the meeting.
Yes, because the meeting, when you schedule the meeting, it in the link it says what you want to talk about.
Okay.
And attach a document. You can do it there.
Okay, so I'll do that.
Cool. Any other questions?
No. Oh, well, I'm also doing fiction, just not plays. Just, you know, I've been writing some fiction. So I might want to just do 5 minutes with that, or I'll send you an email and let you put an attachment on, because there was a piece that I liked, but I wanted to like go more with it, and it's a fiction work. So
you're gonna do it. So you're gonna do a novel?
Probably not a novel. I probably would do a short story and submit it to a magazine that, you know, so in the email I'll explain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll be sending out my 2 classes that folks might find interesting.
Okay.
Next, I think you're ready for private coaching, but the classes that are going to come out in the next 2 weeks, there's going to be 2 of them. There's going to be an 8-week class where a small group of writers get together and read their stuff and get feedback each week. And then I'm doing a year-long subscriber program for writers.
Okay.
Where each month you will get a video tutorial, lessons and assignments. And then each week you will get more information about the theme of the month.
Okay.
So it will be a totally automated thing so that people can go in, pick up their assignment, post in their account, ask questions, get feedback. And so they'll be getting a weekly update, and then each month they'll get a huge lesson which they'll have to generate. So the point is that by the end of the 12 months, you will have finished your first draft if you do.
Okay.
So I'll be sending out information about those 2 classes.
Okay.
Exciting.
Yeah.
And if there are no more questions, I think we can wrap up. Any more questions?
No, you won't hear from me till next week because I'm going